We ain't talking about original gangster. I
Right.
ain't no gangster.
Right.
I'm a gentleman.
Exactly.
I'm not no gangster. I'm a gentleman.
Exactly. Been a gangster.
Yeah, I've been a gangster when you put me in that type of environment.
Exactly. But today, we're something totally different.
Something totally different.
So hear what I say, for it is the truth you see. There can only be one, the original.
OG, two letters that define respect. Welcome to the original OGs. I created the original OGs to document the forgotten parts of American history. I want to recognize and give a voice to the men and women that have climbed to the top of their game. Believe me, the men and women that sit in front of this marquee have been authenticated as original OGs. My name is Mr. Rick. Welcome to my world, a world of the originals, the unique. Welcome to the original OGs.
Welcome to the Original OGs podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Rick. We'll be talking about the things and issues that are going on in the Black and brown community. My guest today, out of New York by way of Brooklyn, is Mr. Fashion. How you doing, sir?
All right, and yourself?
I'm great. One OG speaking to another OG. We want to get to some real issues here. We want to take the audience on a journey here, so allow us to get inside your head. Let's see if we can make some sense out of what's going on in our community, different states, in this country. How are you feeling about the things that are going on in the streets today, from here to the White House?
I see pure chaos. Chaos, no sense of direction. It's just a bunch of foolery.
When you say chaos concerning our community, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to lack of leadership, disorganized, just everybody just doing whatever they think they should do with no sense of direction.
Okay, so if we were to say that back in the day in our community, and I'm sure in other communities, the OGs were the ones that made sure that the community was safe and that there were relevant issues in the community. Do you feel that that's missing in our community?
It's most definitely missing. We paved the way back in the days in our generation, but all the OGs that have paved the way now, they're no longer here.
How do you define in your language an OG?
I define an OG who was one, who was actually went through the trials and tribulations and the experiences, the downs and the ups, the highs and the lows, to really be able to examine what life is really about and to be able to stand fast under any circumstances and still come out and be able to walk upright.
See, and that's a beautiful thing, because here on the original OGs, we say an OG is a person that may have started on the left side of life or the right side of life, had their journey, ended up in a space that they began to control to make this world a better place. Pretty much the same thing you're saying.
Mm.
OGs are not someone that is just of age.
Mm.
It's a qualified term of endearment. How do you think we can redevelop that in our community?
Well, what we have to do, the ones who has been chosen after demonstrating that they're real OGs, we the ones that have to come back and step to the community and these young people and teach them, give them a path and everything, show them the mistakes that we made so they don't have to go down that path and make the same mistakes that we made. We can save them all the headaches and the trauma of getting in trouble and stuff like that, because myself, I started out on the wrong path as a kid, And that lifestyle led me into being in a very bad situation that I wouldn't wish on nobody.
Let's look at that situation. I'm thinking that you're referring to your time in prison.
Yes.
Let's expound on that a little bit. What led you to ending up in prison?
I was living a lifestyle in the streets. I was a pimp in New York City, and a huge pimp. And because of living that type of lifestyle, it brought jealousy because I was successful, and I was framed on a murder, and I wound up doing 27 years in prison.
In that 27 years, what did you take out of that situation in order to make yourself a better person, to strive to make your community better?
But that's a long time to do a whole lot of thinking, man. You know what I'm saying? So I sat in the cell and I studied. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't use drugs.
That's a beautiful thing.
Never did none of those things there. So I never took no medication. It's hard to do time without doing any of these things. A lot of people in prison, they take something to try to avoid the reality of being locked in a cage.
Well said.
But I didn't want no cushion. I wanted to feel every day of that. And I felt every day of that, and I faced every day of that head on. I felt every day of the pain that I was in there for 27 years locked in a cage, right? But within that time, I studied and tried to figure out the system, because I was sentenced to die in prison.
Yes.
But through the grace of God, I'm here, I'm out. But I always remembered in my mind, I said, even if I don't get to go, always be ready. So I studied and constantly prepared myself to be ready, disciplined, and everything for when I do happen, some way to get a miracle and get out of that cage, that I'll be ready. And I'm here and I'm ready.
Beautiful thing. So when you look back at that situation, I did time. I didn't do as much time as you, but what would you say to young people that you see are headed in that direction, and how do we create a platform to distribute information that will allow them to miss that type of situation?
You're getting it firsthand from me. I was in the worstest prisons in New York State. I'm quite sure everybody heard of the notorious Attica. Did a lot of time in there. So I got a blueprint for you. If you want to know how to avoid that, you need to listen to what I got to say. Because I live, whatever you're doing in them streets, I lived it for real. And I lived it in the penitentiary. I've been stabbed 9 times. I got cuts all over me. So when I went in the joint, I had to turn into an animal in order to survive. You don't get to use the phone. You have to fight to use that phone. You want to call your parents. You ain't gonna get to call your parents. I wasn't in no gangs. I wasn't no Muslim, because I look at all those things as protection. I did my time straight up. I ran alone, and those that know me out of New York City, I'm an ex-boxer, so I had the title in prison for 15 years. So, I defended myself. But a lot of guys are not gonna do that. They're gonna go in there, they be tough in the street, and commit all kind of crimes, and then they get in the penitentiary, and they look for a crutch. So you're not really tough at all. So you need to stop that before you end up there. Just be yourself. You don't have to be tough to be a man. That's not what a man is. Just be a gentleman. I've never hurt anyone who didn't try to hurt me.
That can apply on the streets as well as in prison.
Most definitely.
I would like to say to young people, and I think you would like to reiterate, in order to avoid a situation like that, and in order to be successful in life, you need to get your tools together. See, you need to know which tools that you need to sharpen. You can get the wrong tools and end up in the wrong place.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? So I would say to young brothers and sisters out there, get your education. I know you've heard this song 1,000 times, but you need to get that basic education so that you can put yourself in an environment that's going to give you the opportunity to aspire. Once you get that opportunity, then take control of it. But in order to position yourselves in that situation to be able to take advantage of it, you got to have your tools, man. When I was in prison, you never caught me without a book. I read some of everything because I needed to know how to position myself so that I could be able to take control of my environment.
When you return.
And when I returned, I was able to put myself in a situation that allowed me to aspire to something that I wanted to be, because I was determined the last time I went to prison not to go back to prison. I didn't want to leave my children out here vulnerable. I didn't want my children to be embarrassed in school when they say, well, what is it that your father does? Oh, he's in prison. You know, I didn't want to set that example for my children. I wanted to give them something, and I think I gave them something that was far beyond that. I have daughters. They're in some of the greatest schools. My son is on the way to one of the greatest schools. And that leads me into the conversation of, can you identify any female OGs?
Yeah, well, all the female OGs I know, they went on to the next. They are deceased. You know, I know a lot from my generation, but they all passed away.
Well, what about your friend Foxy Brown?
Yeah, Foxy's cool. Shout out to Foxy Brown.
That's
My
an OG,
homegirl.
ain't it?
Yeah, she's an OG.
The OGs has no restrictions. You put the work in, you put the work in. You know, she did some things at a time when the opportunity was not there. That's what OGs do.
Right.
You know, that's your friend. You know, I think you would know her better than I do. And I've heard you say to me that, hey, this lady takes care of business. You know, so in my mind, that's the beginning of an OG. Just from the little that I know about her, and only what I know about her is what I've read. I don't know anything. I would give you the opportunity to express if she does not fit that criteria.
Foxy definitely fits the criteria of OG. She's one of the youngest females in rap history. She started out when she was 15 years old. She's from Brooklyn like me. And she came up in the grime and gutter, and she held it down. And she's very successful.
Very successful. And she came out of an environment, I know here in Chicago, in my environment, we have a strong gang presence. I'm sure they have that in New York.
Yes, they do.
And I'm sure she was faced with that. So how did that start in New York? What was the original concept for gangs in New York?
Well, when I was coming up, we had gangs, but it was nothing like the gangs of today. You know, the gangs in New York, they wasn't violent like they are today. You know, it was more just like a hangout. Now, the way this thing started today in New York, like with the Bloods and the Crips and the Yetas and all these different gangs here, I happen to really know why that really started real hard in New York, because I was incarcerated at the time when that Blood thing started. I'll give you a quick rundown on that right quick, because a lot of people in New York don't even know how that did started, right, and why it started. But like I said, prison is a bad place to be. I was on Rikers Island, which is New York City most notorious holding cell. Pre-trial prisoners go there before you get sentenced and go upstate. And the gangsters, you know, not OGs, but gangsters, at that time, they was running the phones and everything like that. So you couldn't get on the phone if you wasn't no gangster. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
You're not touching that mic. That's what we call it, the mic, the
Right.
jack. And the phone is the most serious thing in prison. You know what I'm saying?
Your lifeline.
Yeah, it's your lifeline. Without that, you're dead. People have died in prison over that phone.
Yes, sir.
Many people, I'm not gonna say people, many people have died.
Many.
I've seen in that prison setting over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the blacks had control of the phone, all right? And the Latin brothers felt they wasn't getting their share of the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So what they started doing on Rikers Island, they start forming together and start transforming on black brothers, start jumping them and stuff like that, right? So then that's when the blood started, you know, to equalize what was going on with the Latino brothers jumping on the black brothers and cutting them and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm not even gonna go into a whole long thing about it.
Right.
That's how that started and got out of control. It started out as something positive in the beginning, and then it just got out of control as to where it is now.
So that spilled over into the streets.
Yes,
So it wasn't in the streets and spilled over in the prison.
it started in the prison.
You know, that's how, well, I don't want to say that's how it started in Chicago, but in Chicago, in reference to what you're saying, these started out as community organizations. They started out with good intentions. And due to various circumstances, these things began to turn against each other, you know, and then it led it into different levels of the negative side, you know, and then, like you just explained, in prison, it began to take another life, you know, and the power structure of it began to develop itself in prison. And then that power structure was sent back to the streets. The prisons controlled the people, certain people in the prisons control that narrative in the streets. You know, when we talk about people like Larry Hoover, love you, brother. That's a brother that's been there for God knows, man, probably 40 years, you know, and he had that type of power. I can't say had, I believe still has that type of power to be able to control the narrative out here, you know. Sounds like there was a similar situation in New York. Did we have that same pattern in New York City?
Yeah, well, you know, it started, the power started getting in the wrong hands, and these people that was in power, or these gangs leaders and stuff like that, the negative ones, they start letting that spill off into the streets when they was going home, whatever, and using that power for the wrong reasons in the street.
Yeah,
Took
pretty
something
much.
positive and turned it negative.
Yes. And in your memory, when did that thing turn violent?
I'd say probably around 1999.
99?
Yeah, around 1999.
So we're talking.
Started getting crazy. Because it started like in 93.
Mhm.
I was in prison at the time on Rikers Island when it started. In 1993, the blood started in 1993 on Rikers Island.
So we're talking about the same period as the so-called crack epidemic.
Exactly.
So you put them two things together, and same thing happened in Chicago. You know, when crack hit, it was pretty much given to those same people, and they distributed throughout the community, and things just went downhill. It's crazy, you know. But let me step back a little bit. I want to ask you something. Here's something that has always been very important to me. Where'd your parents come from?
My parents come from the Deep South. My mother's from Mississippi, and my dad is from Alabama.
Why did they say they came to New York?
They came to New York thinking they're going to escape Jim Crow. They
Thank
came to New York looking for a better life.
Thank you. Did they find one?
No, they didn't.
How long would you say that dream lasted before it turned into, my terms, a nightmare?
Well, you know, I'm the last of my family. I'm the baby of the family. So when they came to New York, I'm the only one in my family that's born in New York. All my sisters and brothers, they all born from down south. I'm the only one originally born in New York. So they used to call me a Yankee. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know?
We got a Yankee in the house.
Yeah, you know, I got a Yankee in the house, right? So I was too young in the beginning to really know what was going on. But let's say like in the 60s, then I started being able to realize what was going on in the world. And I say like 62, anywhere from 62 on up, I started seeing that the nightmare was developing as far as it being still just as bad down south as it is up here in the north.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can remember when I used to like go to school, or I'd be riding my bike and I'd be called the N-word, being chased home by a gang of white people and bottles thrown at us and stuff like that. You know, this I really didn't understand. I didn't understand this here. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that kind of like shaped and molded my way of thinking
Right.
as a young kid. You know?
I get it.
So I like started getting crazy in the streets. You know what I'm saying? And this would start leading me to crime because at the time I'm hearing Malcolm speak.
You're there.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm hearing
Right.
Malcolm speak. I'm hearing Martin Luther King speak. You know, I'm hearing the Black Panthers speaking. So this was shaping me and molding me at that time.
Exactly.
And then I just started going in the street and doing crazy things. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
I get it. You know, for me, similar experience. I'm hearing these guys,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and as a young boy, I'm feeling them, you know, and they're getting in my head. And I'm creating a desire to want to aspire to be like them.
Exactly.
You know, Malcolm, Huey, Fred, all of these guys. These were people, you know, let me come down a little bit, come back a little bit. You probably had a similar experience. For me, there was always the conversation in my home about my parents and my grandparents living in Mississippi.
Mm.
They left Mississippi because one of my uncles killed a white man.
Mm.
White man came on their property talking about what he was going to do.
Mm.
And he found out he wasn't going to do that. And my uncles did what they were going to do. And when they did that, they had to come north. So I've always heard these courageous stories from my grandmother and my aunts and uncles about how they resisted to that Southern lifestyle in the South, you know, and it gave me a certain courage that, hey, I'm not going to let you do that to me either, you know, and I began to gravitate toward people like Malcolm. I began to gravitate and listen to Dr. Martin Luther King. I began to listen to Fred Hampton. I can remember going down Roosevelt and the Black Panthers giving me a box of food. And I promise you, brother, we didn't have a grain of food in the house. I went home and told my mother. She said, where you steal that food from? I said, I ain't steal it. They gave it to them guys in them black hats. She said, okay, yeah, that's good. Let me get that. I have never, to this day, forgotten that. This show
has the intent to define what a real OG is, what an original OG is. My partner and I have developed a method to ensure that if someone should sit in front of this OG logo, that they have been authenticated and found to be true in their history as far as what an OG is.
Do you feel that the violence in the community may have been manipulated by the government somewhat?
Most definitely, because I remember when the drugs was dumped into the community back in the days, and it just shut down everything after that.
So when the drugs came in, money got involved, guns got involved, violence got involved.
All of the above.
Yeah, you saw that in your community firsthand. What did that look like?
Looked like a mess. That's what it looked like.
Pretty much it looked like a mess to me,
Yeah.
so I understand. You ever had, and I'm sure you have, some instances whereas you had to encounter situations like that?
Yeah, well, half my generation died from heroin back then, and I witnessed it firsthand. It was dying in the war because the Vietnam War was going on at the same time, and heroin was dumped in the community, and it was death everywhere. Everybody's walking around like zombies in New York.
Hey man, when I got out of the service, the Army in 1979, I stopped in New York. It scared me so bad. I saw 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, strung out on heroin, laying in the hallways, laying on the side of the street. I mean, literally, with the needle still hanging out their arm. I said, what kind of people are these, man? This is crazy. It hadn't hit Chicago yet. Right after that came the gunplay. Did that happen in New York?
Yeah, it happened in New York. A lot of, because at one time, it was unheard of for getting a gun in New York. If anything, we had zip guns.
Right, exactly.
We had zip guns. We couldn't get no guns. Only people who had guns was the police.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have a switchblade,
Right,
or we a fist fight.
right. Sticks, bottles.
Yeah, so then guns started popping up in New York out of nowhere. A bunch of guns. Everybody started getting guns.
Where do you think those guns came from?
The same place where the drugs came from.
Okay, do you feel like there may have been some government participation or drug lord participation? What were your thoughts of that?
I believe it was the government. It was a conspiracy with the government to dump all this stuff into the community.
I kind of feel that.
Because at the time, like I said, as a kid growing up, we had a strong message from OGs and leaders,
Exactly.
and like I was getting toward that a lot, like the Panthers, Malcolm, and all that. I was feeling that as a
Right.
kid.
Yeah.
That I wanted to be one of them. I used to look up to them.
I agree.
You understand?
I agree.
And then when all of them started getting killed and dying off, and the drugs started taking advantage of everybody, then I was just lost, and then I lost my brother, because my brother, I used to look up to my oldest brother. He was an OG
Mm-hmm.
with a keen reputation,
Right.
real gentleman, and then he died. Then I was just lost. I just took to the streets.
So I know in New York, at that point you just described, when the drugs came, the guns came, then all of a sudden, the gangs began to look at each other as opposition. They began to mark territories. For the simple fact, in Chicago, you can't sell drugs in my territory. You can't sell drugs in my territory. These were different organizations, and they're selling drugs, and they're protecting the monies and the drugs with the gun violence.
Yeah, well, in the 60s, we didn't have that problem in New York. Like, we only started having that problem, like, in the late 80s and 90s, like when the Bloods and all those other gangs like that started coming in.
Same here.
In the 60s, we didn't have that problem with the
Right.
gangs and the
True.
drugs.
True.
You know.
In the 80s, that began to happen.
Right.
More so middle 80s, late 80s, early 90s. Early 90s, it went crazy.
Right.
Now, we're being introduced to rap at that time. And rap was a good thing. And like all the other things we were talking about, They infiltrated it, and the message became derogatory, along with the drugs and the guns. And the next thing I know, hey, man, it was a crazy world.
Mm,
About that time, you were in prison.
right.
Yeah.
My
So,
first stretch in prison, I did 2 bids.
okay,
First time with the prison, I was 17 years old.
right.
And that was like in 1972. I went to prison. I did 15 years. That I was guilty of. Like I said, I took to the streets. I started going crazy out there in the streets,
Right.
right? Getting into all kind of stuff. Went to prison, came home. And see, that there would set the tone for me to be set up anytime the police wanted to set me up, because now I got a record.
Exactly.
And then I wound up getting framed and doing the long stretch of 27 years.
Right. How do you feel that we can participate in the aspiration of taking this thing and putting it or maneuvering it to another space?
Well, we the ones that had to be able to do it. We the ones that got the power. Because like I said, I done lived through my generation. You look at it, I lived through my generation, the generation after mine, the generation after that generation, and now I'm living in these kids' generation. You know what
Yes.
I'm saying?
Exactly.
So I done seen a lot. So I'm able to, through my eyes and through my life, express to them everything that I've seen, everything I've been through. I could tell them what's around that turn before they even go around there.
Quite naturally.
You know what I'm saying?
It's waiting on you.
It's waiting. I can tell them what's waiting around the corner.
Hey,
for 'em.
it's a gorilla in the closet,
And
man.
any type of lifestyle that they want to live, or they think they can be successful in, I can tell them what the outcome going to be.
So how do we create a roadmap to prevent some of these children from going that route?
We had to show them that working a 9 to 5, because I look at it like this. I've seen a lot of guys since I've been home. I've been gone almost 30 years, right? The same guys that I left on the street corner when I went away, they still on that street corner. The ones that's living, they still on that same street corner. I came home, only been home 7 years. I worked a 9 to 5 since I've been home. I got a house. I got 2 cars. I got plenty of jewelry. All these things that we aspire to have when we was young and out there in the street trying to look at a fast way and a quick way and a shortcut to get it. I got all that in some with the 7 years of just working.
After coming out.
After coming out of the penitentiary doing 27 years.
Then you sit back, or do you sit back and say, well, damn, what would have happened had I started out this way?
That's what I'm saying. That's my point right there. If I'd have worked at a young age for them 27 years, ain't no telling where I would have been and what I would have had. I've been retired right now.
And when we say had you worked, we don't mean necessarily go and find a job. Just had you worked, whether you worked for yourself, whether you worked with a group that was aspiring to create a business of their own, in essence, you did legitimate work.
Exactly.
I know when I grew up, I thought that the quick buck was the best way to do things because it could get you there faster. Hey, I tell you, the places that got me faster, I don't think you want to go. You're going to eventually run off the road. I want to kind of change the subject a little bit, but it's an inspiring situation for me. My children. I have 3 children. I have more than 3, but I have 3 now. I have one that graduated from Michigan State, went on to Cleveland University. I have a daughter right now that's in Vanderbilt. She just graduated a few months back. Now she's going for a master's degree at Vanderbilt. And my son is aspiring to go to Harvard. He's 17 years old. Now, I'm not bragging. What I'm saying is I watched my children develop into professional students. It was mind-blowing to me. And it was also heart-wrenching because I'm watching my children have the opportunity to do things that I never could have done because I didn't have the foundation to do it. Like the story you were telling, I went into the streets, so everything was fast for me. I'm looking at my children, everything is one pace, and they're hitting their goals, man. If we could get our children to understand that, I don't know where the limit is for them. We're sitting here on a set here to get a professional product. Hey, man, we got children that could understand this game at 11, 12 years old, man. It's always been my goal to create a production company of children under 15 and allow them to do this and create their own product. It would be mind-blowing because they're capable of doing it. But all these things we're talking about here, the drugs, the violence, they're derailing our children from being able to aspire to all these different things. So what type of remedies would you suggest that we could use in order to escape some of the things that we're sitting here talking about?
What we're doing right now, we had to talk about it. We had to get it out there. We got to go into the community and rub shoulders with these kids, sit down with them, take our time and talk to them. We got to show them the roadmap and the blueprint of the do's and the don'ts, because we the ones that know. Who know better than us?
I agree, those of us that are sensible, and I'm not saying who's not sensible. So after all of this, and I'm looking at a situation today, it's the weirdest thing to me. Our community, the people in our community walk around with link cards like they're American Expresses. And they actually value it as if it's something special. Do you see that as a form of destruction for our community?
Poison.
Say it again.
Poison in the community.
I'm saying a person that doesn't have to go and hunt for their food becomes a lazy person. So if I give you a link card and tell you, hey, every month you're going to be able to eat off of this thing, then is that a negative connotation toward being self-sufficient?
That's why I said poison. Like you said, it makes them lazy.
Thank you. Expound on that for me.
If I could just sit back home every day and and just wait to get a card to go eat, man, that's lovely. I ain't gonna want to do nothing.
Wow.
But I get out and go to work every day. I'm successful because I get up and go to work every day.
There's something about what you just said that took me a long, long time, and I want to say this to young people. I couldn't see getting up going to work every day for somebody else until I understood that it was not just getting up going to work. When you're in a positive environment doing something for X amount of hours, it takes you away from doing something that's going to hinder your life. If you're not working, you're in the streets, next thing you know, you're in prison.
I don't mind this double workshop that they always used to say, right, when we was kids.
I promise you, man. Today, that's all I do is search for work. But the type of work I'm searching for is because of the years that I put into something that I still have a strong desire to do. But sometimes you got to do some things. My grandmother used to tell me, hey, man, sometimes you got to do some things you don't want to do. My parents cleaned houses for a living. They would take me to these houses, and these houses were owned by white people, no disrespect. It was a job. And they would clean for them and take care of their children, but they loved my grandmother. I couldn't see myself giving in to the system that way. So I became somewhat of a rebel, and I paid the price of a rebel. You know, I paid the price of a stupid rebel. You know, I wasn't intelligent about it at all.
I want to say again, because, you know, we're on camera and people see us, how we dress. I got all this from working, you know. And as I was a kid, you know, I always liked to dress. That's why my name is Fashion. I was known as one of the best dressers in New York City. As a kid, I did that all my life. But them same things that I wanted, and I know young kids want today, the same way I wanted them, you can get it working. I got all this from working.
You know,
It's simple.
working is a very valuable tool. Working gives you the experience and the knowledge to continue to go on and do something else that you've always had a desire to do. But if you don't work, you won't figure out how this thing works. And I'll give you a good example. I went into the military. I was 18 years old. At 18 years old, when I went into the military, that was a situation I wasn't feeling. I'm like, this is crazy as all outdoors. These people tell you when you can crap, when you can sleep, when you can eat. I wasn't used to that. I was just a wild animal. But after 6 or 9 months, I began to buy into it. And I began to see the benefit of it. And then it became a game to me. And this is the important part of it. It became a game to me to the point that I wanted to be the best at it because of my peers. They were giving out rewards and benefits. And, you know, we had a situation to whereas we'd have formation every morning, the sharpest guy would get the day off. I beat them people so bad at that game that they had to come up with 2 people getting the day off. Because the guys would say, hey, man, ain't no need of us coming out here, man. This dude is going to win every day, so why are we doing this? So they had to create it for 2 people. And I'm saying that to say, when you get in these environments like that, when you go to college, when you go to a corporate structure to work, you begin to shape your thinking that way. And then you begin to play that game. And that's when you begin to learn how to win. But my point is, it's the same thing. And when you participate in games and you aspire to be the best gangbanger, the best hitter, and you start doing crazy things to be the best, shooting people, killing people, robbing people, you know, it depends on the environment that you place yourself in, or but, you know, a lot of times you don't place yourself there. You're just forced to be there. But we need to try to figure out how to attract these young people into things that's going to motivate them toward working, that's going to have a real outcome to it. What do you think about that?
Like I was getting ready to say, right? When I came home out the pen, I came home with nothing but a backpack on my back. My mother passed away while I was in the joint. My whole family passed away while I was in the joint.
Wow.
Yeah. I came home with no family.
Right.
I'm the last one. Right? I'm the
Wow.
baby of the family. So everybody is dead when I came home. Right?
Wow.
Came home to nothing. And I made it happen, man. I made it work for me. When I came home, they put me in a shelter. You know, this was this was something very degrading to me.
I get
because
it.
I had a woman. I had found a woman while I was in the penitentiary, and I had married her. She was my wife, and she had a home and everything. In fact, she was a parole officer. She was a
Wow.
parole. That's funny, right? She was a parole officer. So when the state found out that, they demolished that.
Yeah.
They was like, oh no.
You were the job.
Yeah. They gave her an alternative. You were
Yeah.
the job. So I said, baby, don't worry about it. Go ahead. I'm good. So I wind up having to go back to New York City because she lived it upstate somewhere.
Right.
And I was supposed to be going parole to her. they made me go back to New York City. They said, "No, you're not from, you from New York City. That's where you're going back to." I said, "I don't have no family in New York no more." I said, "This is my friend. This is my wife. How you gonna tell me I got to go back to New York City?" So they was trying to set me up for failure. You see what I'm saying? But I outsmarted them. They was trying to set me up for failure because they didn't, you know, I wasn't supposed to come home in the first place.
Exactly.
In their mind, you know what I'm saying? But I beat the odds.
Right.
So anyway, I comes home. They puts me in a shelter. The shelter was just like still being in prison. I'm in there with a bunch of, yo, this was crazy. I'm in the shelter, same setup, like prison. I'm in the room with like 4 different guys, junkies, you know, all dirty, stuff like that. I'm like, this is crazy. I said, man, I can't do this. I done did 27 years. I'm not coming home to still do some more prison time.
Prison was better than this.
Yeah, you know, this ain't for me.
Right.
You know, I'm looking at him and I'm locking up my locker. I'm saying, man, I can't sleep like this. Rats running all around.
Wow.
So what I did, like I said, being that I was a ex-boxer, so I started my own little thing, training kids.
Right.
I started training kids. When the streets started training them, I was training them in the parks. I eventually got in the gym and started training them in the gym. I made my own way.
Right.
It's an alternative of going back to the streets doing crime because I'm never going back to the penitentiary.
Hello.
I'm never going back there.
Burn my sheet.
That's not going to happen.
I
You know what I'm
get
saying? So, yeah, I started helping kids by training them to box. And this is the things we got to do. You're talking about, you know, what alternative that we can do. And I also used to be a motivated speaker when I came home. I used to go to colleges and stuff like that and speak from my experiences of being in prison and coming from the streets.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I remember when I was a kid and they used to try to deter me from crime, I was in the youth house, which is Spofford. That's another place where they prepare you for prison.
Right.
Juvenile delinquent, right? And people would come in like me to talk to us, but they really wasn't like me because they didn't do no time or nothing like this. They sending people in to try to talk to us. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at them like, man, I ain't trying to hear that mess.
Yeah, dream merchant.
Right, so this is what we're looking at now, the kids, how they look at us. How are they gonna look at us and listen to us? We got to come at them with the real deal.
Exactly.
Gotta let them know, man, I'm the real deal.
Right. Along with a plan.
Exactly.
A viable plan.
Exactly. I'm not gonna tell you a whole bunch of garbage.
Exactly.
You know, I'm gonna tell you the real deal. I am you. I sat there in that same seat, in that same space,
Exactly.
and went through everything that you're going through now.
And it wasn't looking like this.
And it wasn't looking like this. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Right.
So if you want help, you need to deal with these real OGs because that's what we're dealing with right now. The real OGs. Not somebody just labeling themselves an OG. We ain't talking about original gangster.
Right.
I ain't no gangster.
Right.
I'm a gentleman.
Exactly.
I'm not no gangster. I'm a gentleman.
Exactly. Been a gangster.
Yeah, I've been a gangster when you put me in that type of environment.
Exactly. But today, we're something totally different.
Something totally different.
You know.
I'm out here and I'm enjoying life and I love life. And my goal is to help you kids.
What would you say is the pinnacle of your life right now?
The pinnacle of my life is great. If you look from where I came from, like I said, you know, I was a hustler, serious hustler. I'm gonna run through that right quick because I skipped this yesterday. I was a hustler who had made a success and made it to the top. Owned a 17-room mansion in Long Island. Those who know me know about it. A boat in the yard and 5 cars. I was about to open up a strip club when I got arrested. Right? But none of that is worth it, you know. Taking the risk that you're taking and stuff like that. People get jealous when you're doing illegal things, and that's how I wind up with a wrongful conviction. So I'm at a good space in my life right now. I'm happy where I'm at and got these things legally, and I'm successful now. Beautiful home, cars, jewelry, everything, women, you know, and now my thing is to try to deter these kids from taking that route I took.
And you would say to them, the traps of your previous life, you would say, hey, you don't want to do this because...
It ain't gonna work, man. Take it from me. It ain't gonna work. Don't even try it. And you don't want to go through what I went through. Everybody can't be as tough as me. I was tough for real because I had no choice but to be tough. But it ain't worth it. I did 10 years in the box, which is solitary confinement. All you cats that been up north from New York, y'all know what that is. You know, been stabbed several times. I stabbed a lot of people, only in self-defense though. You know, you don't want that life. I didn't eat for 6 months in the hole because you had some terrible officers at Comstock where I was at, and they was urinating in the food and putting feces in the food, things that you don't want to know about or want to go through.
Yeah. So today, you are taking your space to do what? To help the community and the children to become better people.
I'm taking my space and my life experiences, and that's why I'm here, to bring it to y'all so that y'all don't have to go through that, don't want to go through it. I got to come to you and tell you what I've been through and letting you know I'm the real deal. Anybody out of New York, they know me because half of New York City been to the penitentiary. You know what I'm saying? That's how we come up. Any one of y'all that was in the penitentiary in the 70s, y'all that's watching, all y'all know me. Y'all know I'm that living legend. Boxing Shabar, that's the name I had in the penitentiary. Shabar is an Arabic name that stands for great warrior that was given to me because, you know, I was a legend in that boxing career. In the streets, my name is Fashion because I was a hustler, living as a pimp. I don't do none of those things no more. I work a 9 to 5, and I'm happy with it. I make a lot of money. I make over $3,000 a week coming home, you know, with a paycheck. It could be done. I wish I'd have did that years ago, you know. In my whole time in incarceration, I did 2 bids. I spent 42 years of my life in prison, not counting my juvenile time. So you don't want that, man.
Exactly. There are so many ways that you can live a beautiful lifestyle and not spend all your money, especially on garbage. So we need you to subscribe, stay tuned, and we will see you soon. That's it. That's all.
We have created this show so that men and women alike can come forward and tell their truth. If you have people that you believe to be an OG, go into the comment section, write us, let us know where to find the history so that we can authenticate it, bring them on the show, tell their story so that we can add to the American history. That's it. That's all.
The original.